And the thing I would campaign is if a data center is coming to town, that data center is going to have to buy batteries for everybody in the area. And those batteries, you're going to get compensated. If you get a battery and you're not paying for that battery, the hyperscaler's paying for the battery. But if you get a battery, you're going to be compensated by the utility for using that battery if you choose to opt in.
Energy isn't just an industry, it's how the world works. I'm Jigar Shah, a clean energy entrepreneur.
And I'm Jamie Nolan, a clean energy communications executive. Welcome to Energy Empire. Jigger, I am excited. I am so
I
excited
think
about
that
this
you've been
episode.
waiting a long time for this one. I don't think you've actually hidden your excitement.
Yes, I am fangirling for this episode. When you first asked me to be a co-host of Energy Empire, one of the reasons I said yes was so that we could record with today's guest, former Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm, who is a personal hero of mine.
I obviously think the world of her. She was, by far the best boss. I don't know if you know the backstory, but like when they offered me the job to run the loan programs office, I was told by my board at Generate Capital, like, we need to figure out a way to get out of this because you don't want to take this job. And so we wrote this like long Word document that basically had all of these unreasonable requests. And then I got Secretary Granholm and Ali Zaidi and Brian Deese on the phone, and they all said, okay, we'll give you everything you wanted if you take the job. And I was like, damn it. Now I got to actually take it, but it was such a joy to work for her. And I honestly can't imagine another secretary letting us get away with all of the things that we were doing because we were breaking the rules the whole time trying to figure out how to get this damn thing restarted and done. And like her personality was probably the only one that would let us do that.
We absolutely were breaking the rules in the best ways. I mean, I think she knew there was a method to our madness, and your leadership obviously was also so strong. And she put so much trust in you and in the team. And one of the reasons that you were able to build the type of culture that you were at LPO was because of her leadership. And I also have to say, have served at the Department of Energy. I did about 9 total years across 3 presidential administrations under 4 different secretaries of energy. And the culture at DOE was the strongest under her leadership, and the churn was much less. So, like, a big thing that you'll see in federal agencies, particularly with political appointees, is that usually, I mean, it's a grueling job. They are
Yeah.
incredibly hardworking. I was a contractor employee, but a lot of the political appointees work like 80 to 100-hour weeks. And so they burn out and they tend to leave after, I would say, like 18 months to 2 years. And the majority of her team stayed for all 4 years, which I cannot even tell you how rare that is. And it's a testament to her leadership. And people were just like very empowered by her vision. And she was just great to work for.
Well, part of the reason I wanted her to be on this show is that we live in unprecedented times. She, stewarded us through the Ukraine crisis and worked with all those energy ministers to figure out, how to get Europe through that crisis. I'm curious what her thoughts are really on this current Strait of Hormuz crisis. But also, she used to be a governor, right? A 2-term governor out of Michigan. And as you know, we've talked about the fact that governors are really under fire because their voters are saying, what are you doing to protect us from data center load growth and electricity inflation and utility rate increases? And so I think that in this moment, her perspective is one that I'm really curious about. And then the last thing really is around, I do think the Biden administration and her leadership is really known for kicking off this entire project, which we call industrial strategy, right? Which allows for the US to be more muscular in figuring out how to restart battery manufacturing in this country and solar manufacturing. And I was so giddy to hear about the fact that, Hanwha Q cells that we provided a loan to in Georgia is fully up and running now, manufacturing their solar cells and modules. And, Rivian just announced that their R2 is fully launched, which we helped put the loan together for Rivian. And so I'm just so happy to see things that we started getting finished. And I think that I'd love for her to take a victory lap on some of that.
It's such a great point, and just can't wait to hear from Secretary Jennifer Granholm, who will always be the secretary in my heart, that's for sure.
Well, I know you also can't help yourself around, flogging our merch. And so I'm sure like our merch store and some of that stuff will come up at energyempire.fm.
I'm very excited personally, very, very excited about the merch store. Can't wait.
Well, without further ado, Energy Empire is powered by Octopus Energy. Natasha, I live in Maryland. Summer here is hot. There are afternoons when every air conditioner in the state kicks in at once. The utility answer to that is new generation of peaker plants. Tell me that's the best we can do.
It's the most expensive thing we can do. A peaker runs a few dozen hours a year, and everyone pays for it all year. Now look at what's actually spiking on those afternoons. EV charging, air conditioning, battery sitting full. Most of that load can move.
So move it?
We do, automatically. The car charges at midnight instead, the house pre-cooled at 4. Every enrolled EV is a peaker plant you never have to build.
And the savings from the plant we don't build? Who pockets that?
Everyone. Peakers go on everyone's bill, whether they run or not. Skip the plant, and that money spreads across the whole system. Flex isn't a feature you bolt on. It's how you electrify the country without building power plants you only need for a few afternoons a year.
Thanks, Natasha Crow, Vice President of Marketing and Comms, North America at Octopus Energy. The link is in the show notes. So now, when do I stop using the formal phrase secretary? Is it something I can call you forever?
Call me Jennifer.
I feel like that is just wrong on many, many levels. Like you have earned the honorific title.
It's
Well-
so true. And I have to tell you, secretary, which I will be calling you, I'm so sorry. Jigar and I, when you come up in conversation and we say the secretary, we're talking about you. Like, I know it's been 18 months, but it is a forever honorific, especially I served 10 years at DOE. Like, it's a huge deal to me to have you here. This is the episode I have been the most excited for since we launched the podcast. Was the opportunity to
Wow,
have-
really? Oh, that's so
Yes.
nice. Well,
Yes.
good. I hope I don't screw it up.
It has been so crazy. It seems like I think we're on number 39 for the president announcing a deal with Iran, although this one seems more real than the rest.
Are we really? 39? Is this 39th time he's claimed we have a deal?
CNN did this montage of like every time he claimed that there was a deal. And I think this is number 40. And I'm just curious, putting the details to the side. I mean, you actually lived through the Ukraine conflict, right? And you had to talk to all of your fellow energy ministers, right, from around the world. I'm just trying to understand how that probably is happening since February 28th. Like, how does that actually happen?
It all happens at the IEA, the International, Energy Administration. That's where we all gather and we all compare notes and we all freak out. And that's, I can guarantee you that I hope you get Fatih Birol on your podcast at some point because he's
I love
head
Fatih.
he's such a peach of a human and is, trying to navigate all of this as well, including the relationship with the United States, given that the IEA has been historically really under his leadership championing the transition to clean energy. And, so what has happened? This obviously it is Ukraine 2.0, and the energy ministers, I have no doubt, are in a slightly different phase than they were with the Ukraine war because they learned their lesson. So the lesson that was learned is obviously you can't rely on a single source for your energy supply. And in that case, it was Russia. So they turned to us. And now they realize they can't rely upon the Middle East or can't rely upon, obviously, transit through the Strait or any single point, choke point like that, nor can they rely just on one supplier. So they're not just going to rely on us. And so their whole effort, in Ukraine, the freak out was about getting supply, but also making sure that costs don't, that citizens don't bear the cost. And so they ended up spending, the EU and the UK ended up spending $870 billion to subsidize rates to keep, so that citizens didn't feel it. That is just a huge amount of money in a short period of time. And, it obviously did not have the impact on demand side strategies, because if you're subsidizing it, then people are going to continue to use it. So in this go around, they're focused less on subsidies because it was so expensive. And now they're focused on investing money for domestic supply. So you see this whole movement toward what is known as energy sovereignty. And that's what's happening with all of them. And they're really, despite the deals for LNG that the Trump administration announced and all of that, they are really looking to be domestic. They really want to have homegrown energy, or at least a variety of suppliers. And so it's a really challenging time for everybody concerned. And who knows how long the latest deal will last, and whether it will actually do what we hope it will do, which would be bring down gas prices for people. But the lesson should be etched in stone by now, that you do not have a single supplier. You must diversify, and you must grow your own.
How would you contrast that with how the Trump administration is reacting to this moment here in the United States? So, of course, we've released 172 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which is something that you were responsible for when you were the secretary.
Yep.
And meanwhile, we have the administration waging like this ideological war against wind and solar power. I think I saw that Stephen Miller had like a tweet go viral yesterday about offshore wind, calling it like a visual insult on God's creation or something very dramatic and over the top. I'm sure like sitting on the sidelines, it must be tough for you. But what is your thought about how they're approaching this domestically versus the way that you see other countries handling it?
Well, first of all, it's just unwise to cut off major source of supply of energy at a point where you have an energy dominance council, and you want to be energy dominant, and you want to push for AI, and all of these AI companies have commitments to their shareholders to power by clean energy. So you're not allowing them to do that. And so you've cut off the ability to permit for wind or solar on public lands, therefore taking away a source of the cheapest form of energy. How counterproductive is that? The insanity of buying off, not just not allowing, but buying off offshore wind permits. I mean, it's just so illogical and so bizarre if you really want to be energy dominant. And so the perverse outcome of this, though, and I think you guys have probably covered this a little bit, but it still makes me chuckle a little bit, that the perverse outcome is that we're seeing a huge expansion of solar. The private sector is jumping in with both feet. Now, maybe they're not waving their hands about it, but their head is down, and you better believe they are deploying. So this year, so our last year was a record year, right, for deploying clean energy with almost 60 gigawatts. This year, it's going to be 86 gigawatts added to the grid in the United States, despite all of that. So, yeah, I mean, it's a weird outcome, isn't it? I mean, the perverse notion that you cut off all of the tax credits for electric vehicles, and because of your action in the Strait of Hormuz, you've had a 30% increase in the purchase of EV hybrids or used EVs. I mean, it's unusual. We'll just say that. It's an unusual outcome. And it was so much of that, of course, is because of the cliff that they added, which of course goes into effect next week. So your project has to be under construction by July. And so all of these developers got very busy very quickly to commit and move dirt so that they could still safe harbor these tax credits. So despite the rhetoric, the action underneath the rhetoric by the private sector has been amazing. And knock on wood, that will continue. And I'll say one other thing is that despite the cancellation of our, LPO loans and grants from DOE, you see the courts have really stepped in and decided to, and have said, you just can't cancel the stuff that went to blue states. That's just not, you can't do that. On the ground, you can't hold back the private sector. It is happening.
Yeah, on that
Amen,
front.
sister.
Oh my god, totally. But on that front, I mean, I want to ask you about the narrative, right? Because last year, Ember said that basically 100% of everything that was net added to the grid globally was solar, wind, and a little bit of nuclear from, our friends at Vogtle as well as China. And that is expected to continue over the next 3 or 4 years. And now with the Strait of Hormuz, as you suggested, all of the energy ministers are trying to figure out energy sovereignty, which also leads you to a little bit of coal, but mostly solar, wind, battery storage, and more nuclear. And so how is it that on this side, the narrative seems like, there's a war against solar, wind, and battery storage. And on this side, practically everything that we're adding to the grid, even in the United States, is solar, wind, and battery storage. I don't understand how that narrative mismatch continues forever.
Jigar, you're assuming that there has to be some logic behind it. They want to support fossil fuels. They know the private sector. I mean, there's fossil fuels. There'll be fossil fuels. But the notion that you should force uneconomical coal plants to stay open at the same time as you are calling upon a reduction in prices for energy, come on. It's just, I don't know. I don't think anybody has dubbed this administration to be the most consistent ever. So this is another log on that fire.
I think there's still so much misinformation. Like I want to see some polling on what Americans would guess is the cheapest energy source, because I'm willing to bet it's certainly not solar, even though utility scale solar is the cheapest electricity source like on the face of the planet. I just don't think people get it. And it's tough. Like, you're an incredible communicator. It's definitely one of your biggest strengths. And as somebody who's worked in communications, it's endlessly frustrating, just the amount of misinformation about what has absolutely become a mainstream energy source. And there just continues to be this disconnect between the misinformation, also known as lies, coming out of the White House, and like the reality on the ground and what we're seeing and what actually is keeping utility rates at bay, if anything, putting more solar on the grid right now.
This is one of the big regrets that I have from our administration. I was out there every day on, CNN or MSNBC, talking about what we were doing. But honestly, only 3 million people watch cable. And there is a huge swath of social media that we were on little bits, we did some TikTok, blah, blah. But we need our team clean. We need a huge effort at comms that encompasses all forms of media, with all forms of spokespeople, including everyday citizens who are saving money. I mean, I want to see their energy bills because they have solar on their roofs and how much deduction they got off their bills. I want to see those. We did those. I mean, our team remembers we would go to weatherization homes and we would look at their energy bills and we would compare it to before and after. And we would have the local media there talking about it, et cetera. That was great. But we need 1,000 more of that, 1,000 times more of that. If you can do 1,000 times, which you can't, 100 times more of that. We need just to have a huge effort at communicating this that we did not have, and that the industry, has not been good about. I mean, the industry itself. I mean, Jigar, you've been great about tapping the industry to be more vocal about and supportive of candidates who are supportive of clean energy and these solutions. But we also need to really get these associations and the industry itself to invest more in telling their story in a compelling way, because people don't believe politicians when they get out there and talk about it anyway. And we need to create permission for the politicians to be able to be supportive of clean energy. And the way that happens is if bottom up people are saying, yes, I want the cleanest form of energy. And by the way, that's solar. So we can all yell it. And on these types of channel, we're talking to people who know what we're talking about but everyday folks probably aren't watching the energy empire, at least yet. Maybe they will be very soon. But
We're working on
well,
it.
that's-
We're
I-
trying to grow it in that direction. We're trying to
that's
bring
great.
this to a broader audience of people. I definitely
Yes.
think on YouTube it's
Yes.
breaking through to
Yes.
folks who maybe weren't don't know very much about energy. And so we're trying to make it more digestible, and we're working on our use of acronyms because we've gotten some flack for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You have to
I
make
mean,
it palatable.
we did. I do a little bit of work with an organization that does an assessment of the social media landscape, and their assessment, Media Matters, in January of 2025, the social media landscape, YouTube, TikTok, et cetera, was 80%. And I'm not getting partisan here. It's just a fact. 80% lean right and 20% lean left. And the candidates on the left, the Democrats, did not go on the red spaces, except for Pete Buttigieg maybe would go on Fox and stuff, and he was great, but not many others would. So we have to tell our leaders to go in uncomfortable places and tell truths that are maybe where you'll get pushback, but be confident in your facts so that you're not just preaching to the choir. You've got to grow. And so that's a project. We need to add more cultural and bubbles that are open to having this kind of conversation.
But part of this, honestly, is just paying people.
What do you mean paying people?
Well, like if you look at residential solar, the amount of customer acquisition costs they pay for every year is about $1 billion a year, right? Of door-to-door salespeople who annoy you during dinner to buy solar power, right? And if they spent 1/10 of that money just paying right-wing influencers like Katie Miller or others to just say nice things about the solar industry, which they all believe because they all hate the utility as much as anybody else does. They all want a $0 bill, right? They all want independence. They don't care about the fact that it's green. They just want to give somebody the middle finger. And so whatever it is, it's just like, but you pay them $1,000 a post and then they post on it.
Well, I don't know if pay to post works as well as getting people who truly understand the facts. And I would just say just the facts alone. You don't need to shade it. It's just the truth. Tell the truth. And I do think that like the balcony solar and the movement to be able to do that will give us a better opportunity because people will be able to take their energy destiny into their own hands, at least feel a little bit more empowered than just being, stuck with a big bill.
Balcony solar, so exciting. Jigar, can you tell folks a little bit about what that is if they've never heard of it before?
Oh gosh, balcony solar. So the way that normal solar works is you put it, on the roof or on the ground, and then you have to hire an electrician to wire it into your electrical panel, right? The panel that has the breakers that you go, and when something goes off, you're like checking every breaker. With balcony solar, you can actually, just hang the panel off of a balcony and then plug it into the outdoor outlet. And, our friends at UL and others are making sure that all of that's safe. But you can just plug it right into the outlet. So anybody can do it. You can just order it on Amazon, have it shipped to your house. You can hang it yourself. You plug it in. So there's no like sales costs. There's no installation costs. There's none of those costs. You just plug it right in. And there's, over 4 million systems that have already been installed in Germany. There's lots of other countries that are doing it. And we have a whole movement. I think we've got Utah and Virginia that have already passed laws to say it's legal. And then we've got 5 more states that are passing it as we speak. And then 10 more that have introduced legislation. It's going viral.
I love it.
Yes, it's very exciting. My next door neighbor, I have a solar array on my roof, the hardwired kind, but my neighbor's had a balcony solar system out on his back porch for a while now. So yeah, I'm seeing it in real life. It's really, really cool. I want to circle around to electricity rates and energy affordability, specifically utility bills, because we know that The current administration made a lot of promises about lowering people's utility bills. Meanwhile, the Edison Electric Institute, which is the trade association for the big electricity companies, the utilities in the United States, is bragging that budgets are up 40% just in the past year from their own estimates, because utilities are basically just building so much new stuff, and that's how they earn their profits. So rates are climbing everywhere. In some places across the country, more than 15% in 1 year, which is unprecedented. You governed Michigan through a really difficult economic time. You know what an affordability crisis does to a family. You are, literally had a job where you met people in their homes and talked to them about these things day in and day out. So when a utility bill jumps like that, who do you find that voters blame versus who they should blame?
It's clear the first entity they blame is the utility company because it shows up on their bill. And then with all this anti-data center stuff, the second entity they blame is the data, potentially, if they're in an area that has a lot of data centers, like in Virginia, they blame the data centers. And then the third, or maybe the second person they blame is the executive politician, not the legislature, but they'll blame the governor. They'll blame the president. And in this case, they should blame the president because of the actions that the Trump administration has taken to keep us away from the cheapest form of energy. But clearly, they ought to be blaming the fact that we've got, and you guys have been talking about this, but the fact that we've got a utility business model that rewards rate-basing expensive poles and wires when there's existing capacity on the grid, and the business model, and they're, the utilities are doing what the model says that they should do, right? But if the model were better, and if the utilities were rewarded for lowering costs, actually rewarded for bringing down costs, rewarded for obviously using grid enhancing technologies, advanced conductors, we're rewarding for demand response, we're rewarded for virtual power plants, we're rewarded for using that additional capacity, that headroom on the grid that we know exists because at any given time, only 50% of the grid is in use. I mean, why we have got, this is what governors got to do. They've got to appoint PUC members who understand this so that, you can do it through the regulatory side, you can do it through legislation. But this is the problem that exists, is that governors in many places, because it's complicated, don't understand their power in appointing members of the regulatory body that could ensure that the utility business model was not simply rewarding rate-basing huge expenses, but instead was rewarding investment in even OpEx that reduces CapEx.
But let's go deeper into that. You were a governor running for office, and now Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey just ran for office and won. She ran on the fact that she was going to freeze rates, and certainly a lot of governors have taken notice of her success and are thinking about, using that same tagline, right? And then you served on her transition team to put together a sort of a plan, and now she's going into the state legislature to pass bills, and the Board of Public Utilities, which is their regulator, right, and nominating somebody, I think, who is a fine candidate there. And so, but this is hard, right? The utilities are usually the largest donor to local.
Oh, totally. But we got to make it in their interests, right?
Right.
You can share in the savings with them. Just make it, right now, it's not in their interest. But if you make it in their interest, then sure, they would be on board. Why not? New Jersey is a great example. So Mikey Sherrill comes out, she campaigns on a rate freeze. First executive order she does is essentially a rate freeze. And underneath that, she's calling upon the Board of Public Utilities to, I want to say, open up an affordability docket, if you will. Make sure that they review the business model so that they are supporting things like demand response, like distributed energy resources, like virtual power plants, et cetera. And then she appoints this new member who will be the president of the Board of Public Utilities. His name is Ben Hertz-Shargel. He is an expert in this very thing. He knows all of this stuff. He is going to drive this agenda from the regulatory side. So she did all of that, which is great, in the first 6 months. And she lifted New Jersey's moratorium on nuclear. which was decades and decades old. And she signed legislation to make sure that there's more battery, utility scale and home battery use. And she issued an executive order about increasing solar generation. So she's done all of these things. And my hope is that the BPU process will result in maybe one of the first actual states that fully sign on, not just to a pilot virtual power plant, but to really commit to that is a part of their regulatory process. And that, frankly, the utilities are partners in making that happen.
That's impressive. When she announced that rate freeze, like as a policy position, Jigar, you were doubtful about that. I don't remember if we talked about it.
It sets you up, right? Because as everyone knows, I mean, the utility has the right to get a return on the investment that they make, right? And so when you do a rate freeze, it just delays the inevitable. So if you don't actually then solve the underlying business model challenge,
100%.
you end up having a 30% rate increase right when you're running for re-election in 4 years.
Sounds like a lot of follow through by Mikey Sherrill, though, and I'm really
that's the
excited to hear
thing.
that
Yeah, that's exactly right, Jamie. I'm so happy that it wasn't just a day one executive order, take it or leave it, and then run away. She's reshaped. Now, the Board of Public Utilities had 2 appointees that were from previous governor, but when she was taken office, so she didn't have a chance to fully remake it. But she's appointing this new guy as the president of the BPU. So, and assuming that he's confirmed, I think and the directives that she's given to what the BPU must look at, including this utility business model thing and distributed resources and demand response. It's heading in this direction. They're like one meeting away from being able to actually take this on full bore. So it's kind of exciting.
That is exciting. I feel like I need to tune in and follow this work more closely because I didn't
And
know.
can I
all this
say,
was
do
underway.
you know who her energy advisor is? Elizabeth Knoll,
Yes.
who worked at the Department of Energy. So there.
She's amazing. She's the ace in the hole.
We have a running joke, Secretary, that former DOEers are taking over the world because without naming names, a lot of our friends have been placed into very influential positions where they are able to get incredible work done in terms of transforming the energy system in this country. I feel like there's another announcement dropping on LinkedIn every week. And so we're really excited about it. And it was really hard. I mean, leaving the Forrestal building, which is the DOE headquarters building, is always very sad. Jigar and I walked out together on the last day. It's sad at the end of an administration, but it's so exciting to see where everyone has landed and all the incredible work. I'm sure you must be so proud to see that from all of your colleagues at DOE.
Yeah, 100%. And they've created this great DOE alumni network, and it's really exciting to see what people are doing and how energized they are about what might happen if there is another opportunity to be able to either enter back or at least advise those who will be coming into power. So it's, I'm so I love our DOE team so much. And I'm so happy that people are landing in great spots to be able to carry on the mission of deploy, deploy, deploy. Right, Jigar?
Absolutely. We have a new merch shop open, by the way, and we have a deploy mug. If anyone is looking for one, yes.
Wait, what's the website?
I think it's energyempire.fm.
We'll drop a link in the show notes to the merch store. But yes, we're going to be adding things, but we do have a deploy mug. We may need to do some merch with your DOE headshot, Secretary, with deploy.
You don't want my headshot, but definitely I'm looking for a T-shirt. Come on.
All right, we'll get a T-shirt in the mail to you. Definitely.
More swag.
It's in the mail. It's in the mail.
All right.
What's coming your way?
There are 36 governorships on the ballot this year, and data centers have become that rare thing that occasionally hits in American politics when something that people on both ends of the political spectrum, like Steve Bannon and Bernie Sanders, can agree on. Candidates in Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin are campaigning on data center guardrails, and polling shows that nearly half of Americans expect data center energy costs to be a campaign issue. You have never lost an election. So if you were on a ballot this November, what would be your energy message, and particularly around data centers, since that's
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would campaign on the energy bill is too damn high, and we are gonna fix the damn energy bill, as Gretchen Whitmer would campaign on fixing the damn roads, and whoever else was campaigning on the rent is too damn high. It is too high. But I would also be super clear that data centers done right can be an ally in bringing down your energy bills. And you're going to see, we've seen the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab study, the Brattle Group study, that for every gigawatt of new power you add to the grid, you can reduce loads by 1%. But it doesn't, 1 to 2%, it doesn't resonate with people. And so you have to say to them that, look, I don't like AI either, but data centers actually can help bring down your load, but they can also, the data centers can give the community an opportunity to say what they want to happen. So for example, in Louisiana, there was just an announcement last week that teachers in an area where a data center is located, a big data center, are getting a $50,000 bonus because of the increase in sales and property tax that that community had. In Loudoun County, Virginia, they learned the hard way. They didn't offer tax breaks for property taxes. They offered it for sales and use taxes. And what difference that makes is that the data center and the property taxes really impact whatever your local officials can decide to invest in, and the coffers of the municipality. And so if you have a big load-bearing entity coming in paying property taxes that are huge, you can see your property taxes decrease, like in Loudoun County, where they had a 25% decrease in their property taxes. Now, if they had guardrails around the increases in their electricity prices, that would have been amazing, but they didn't. So they learned it the hard way. And that's why people are coming out with pitchforks, and they're using Loudoun County as an example of energy bills going through the roof. So this is why the guardrails have to be super clear. I'm running for governor, and I'm going to ensure that data centers pay their fair share. I'm going to ensure that you're not paying for the data center's power, that you're not paying for the upgrades needed to connect the data center to the grid. I'm going to ensure that the data center actually brings value to the grid by becoming a component of reliability for the grid. So when the grid is full and it's the hottest day of the year, that the data center agrees that it's not going to use as much power, or it's brought batteries to be able to absorb that additional power, or it's moving work to another area of the country so it's not using. So that data center itself becomes an asset. And the thing I would campaign is, if a data center is coming to town, that data center is going to have to buy batteries for everybody in the area. And those batteries, you're going to get compensated. If you get a battery and you're not paying for that battery, the hyperscaler's paying for the battery. But if you get a battery, you're going to be compensated by the utility for using that battery if you choose to opt in.
There was a study just published by the Center for Net Zero, which is owned by Octopus Energy, that said exactly that. They said, when you make financial promises like lower property taxes or whatever it is, people just don't believe you because they don't view it as permanent, right? But if you get a piece of hardware, they view that as permanent. They're like, if I have a battery in my garage and a solar system on my roof because of that data center, that feels permanent. And it switches from data center support was like 20% in the scenario they proposed. And it went all the way to like 65% support if you give people batteries and solar.
Yeah, or you subsidize their purchase of an electric vehicle, like make them pay for the tax credits that were taken away by the Trump administration, so you can use a vehicle battery to be able. And but the kicker is they got to know, like, well, I don't want to like give away my battery usage. What if I need it? But you say to them, you won't even notice. Number one, if you sign up, we're going to do it at a time where it won't matter to you, like at night or whatever. And number two, you're going to get. And, Green Mountain Power in Vermont and all of us have proved this, but you're going to get $100 a month, maybe 50, $100. You could get a couple $1,000s a year just by allowing the utility to use these batteries that have been supplied by the hyperscaler. Now, the Voltus deal that was just announced over at PJM with Google, that's interesting because that organization, like Octopus, is going to amass all of these existing distributed energy resources, put them all together, get to 100 megawatts, and then take that 100 megawatts and bid it into the capacity auction at PJM. Now, that's super interesting, but Google's not buying those resources. Voltus is going out just trying to identify those who are willing to participate. I do think the next step is going to be that these hyperscalers are going to actually offer to buy and purchase as part of a community benefit agreement, or just as part of their capacity that they're going to bring to buy batteries for folks.
I'm such a nerd for this stuff. I actually like got goosebumps when you started talking about it, and it's because because you're a politician, you like really know how to sell it. Like you totally sold me on it. But I don't know if you know that there's the most amazing acronym ever for this. It's BYONCE, Bring Your Own New Clean Energy. Have you heard that?
Is it got two C's, clean energy and capacity, or is it just you're counting clean energy as part of the capacity as part of clean energy?
I don't know. I'm just going with
like
it.
Beyonce.
I just
I
love
do
that
like
somebody
Beyonce.
made it fit. Like bring your own new clean energy. We have shirts, by the way, also in the merch store for this. Beyonce, Bring Your Own New Clean Energy. I think we
That's
need
the
one of
t-shirt.
those.
That's the t-shirt's going right
You
now.
are
my
repping
God.
this so hard, Secretary.
I love it. I love it. And then you just play her song Energy in the background, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
That's
We
exactly
need
right.
like a walkout song and a t-shirt and the whole thing. I can see it now.
Well, we just want to make sure that capacity, bringing extra capacity and additional generation are both needed. And the capacity stack thing is a little more complicated. And so this is, Jigar, I know you talk to these people all the time. Jamie, you probably do as well. The notion of getting this into their head about what I have to go out and find 40,000 homes that are willing to, and how do you get them to agree and all of that? I mean, Octopus is a great example because they know how to sell it. They know how to sign people up, to enroll them, to make it easy for them. And so I think we need, a lot of Voltuses and Octopuses and Rewiring Americas, because I know Ari Matusiak is going to be doing the same thing. We need a bunch of them who are experts at that because it's hard to explain. And the data center companies, the tech companies, this is not their area, right? So they may be a little skeptical, or certainly utilities are skeptical because they haven't done this before. So it's a whole new wave. But if we can get consumers begging for it, consumers who are pissed off and we're coming with the pitchforks and they say that I'm going to let you use a battery, but you're going to pay me, I think that changes the game.
So I just want to dig one layer deeper into this because I feel like there's 36 governor's races and they all want to use the talking points you just gave them. But like when we were running DOE, when you were running DOE, there was a leadership piece there, right? You brought all the data center companies together, you talked to them about it, you sort of, wrestle them to the ground, you do a little job owning, et cetera, right? And you got stuff done. I'm not sure that that's happening here. So now you've got Governor Abbott sort of just like mouthing off about how much he hates data centers. And then, the governor of Wyoming mouthing off about how much he hates data centers. And then this guy, and then that guy, and then this woman. And so I'm just curious, like, how does one do this, right? Because, without federal government leadership, like really driving the governors, right? Even though they regulate the utilities, right? I don't know that EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute and their DC Flex is going to make it happen, or whether it's like nonprofit XYZ and their top 10 things you can do as a governor is going to make it happen, right? I mean, how do you get all this technical knowledge that you procured, like into the hands of these governors?
You hire former DOE employees.
Yes, exactly. Hire Elizabeth Knowles all across the country. Jigar, it's a really great question because, obviously in 2.5 years, we'll have hopefully a chance at the federal level to have that leadership role, but it doesn't exist right now. I do know that the Democratic Governors Association and the National Governors Association have had a number of sessions on this topic because the governors understand that when a data center comes to town, if it's done right, it could be the golden ticket even though the pitchforks are there because citizens don't realize that. And so they want to be able to get this right. And this is why, I mean, Jamie, to your point, a number of them are campaigning they're starting with guardrails for data centers, which is great. They should, but that doesn't mean they are campaigning on a moratorium for data centers, even though at the local level, there's been over 100 moratoria passed against data centers. No moratoria has been passed at the state level yet. There have been 15 bills introduced, but they haven't been signed yet because governors know that, the economic effect of a cluster of data centers or a data center, the cluster of indirect employment, including not just the jobs for building, not just the jobs inside, but the services around. It's a 9-to-1 effect, multiplier effect. So, it's economic development. And if they're going to go, especially to former coal plant sites or former industrial sites, and they're going to fill in gaps where they significantly exist, that's it's amazing.
Yeah.
So but the guardrails have to be the first thing you talk about. I'm not going to let them in unless they have guardrails. That's probably the language you have to use. I'm going to be tough on data centers. They're not coming in here if you're paying for their power. You're not paying for their power. You are not paying for their upgrades. You have to be clear about what your guardrails are, and that you're going to ask even asking the legislature, you're going to order your Public Utility Commission to ensure that the data centers are not spreading the cost to everyday citizens. And we're going to get a community benefit agreement that is really going to help the citizens in that area. I was at a Chamber of Commerce event in Mackinac in Michigan, and I was saying to them, if I were governor, I would ask my Michigan Economic Development Corporation to identify the full supply chain for data centers and make sure I got that supply chain in Michigan so that it's not just the data center, but all the stuff feeding into it, the racks, the coolers, you name it. We could be making it. It's an industrial state. We should have that whole supply chain here. And that really does create a multiplier effect.
On that topic, you presided over the largest expansion of manufacturing in the energy sector, in my lifetime. When the Inflation Reduction Act passed in August of 2022, full of manufacturing incentives, right? You had 900 expansions, announcements, plants under construction, all that stuff. The OBBB actually left almost all of it in place, right? Most of the 45X credits, a lot of the manufacturing credits stayed in place. Some of the demand stuff obviously was rescinded. But I'm curious, when you look back on that moment, what endured, right? I feel like Americans got a little bit of their groove back, right? They thought that they could do big things again, right? We weren't giving people the business card of their Shanghai connection like we were doing before, right? I don't know. What do you think came out of that time period?
Well, okay, first of all, Jigar, it was 950 announcements, not 900. Not
Did
to
they
be
take that
picky.
map down? There was a beautiful map on the DOE website that detailed.
Can I get it for you?
Of course you can.
Get the map for us. I want to see the map. We love the map.
The map.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
There it is.
All of those bubbles, all were people who were incentivized to manufacture clean energy equipment in the United States, moving to the United States, expanding in the United States, millions of jobs because of the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law. Amazing. And you, Jigar, this is so near and dear to my heart as the former governor of Michigan. When we saw all these manufacturing jobs leave, this was the first industrial policy of America that actually said, yes, we have to partner with business to make them successful in a global economy in the United States. It made America irresistible for investment in the United States. How fantastic was that? It was so great. So when the new administration comes in and decides to start to dismantle the Inflation Reduction Act, yes, Jigar, the great news is that we still have incentives for geothermal, for long duration energy storage, amazingly for nuclear, for hydroelectric power, all great. But of those 950 factories, 450 of them were for electric vehicles and the supply chain, which means batteries for electric vehicles, et cetera. And so all those, OEMs were trying to figure out, the car manufacturers are trying to figure out what if there's no demand, because those demand side incentives have been taken away for the purchase of electric vehicle. What am I going to do? Look at how creative the private sector is. So they decide they're going to turn those EV battery factories into utility scale battery factories. And how great is that? So you see Ford stock jumping through the roof because of that smart strategic shift. So yes, the OBBB was not the death knell. And as I've heard you say, Jigar, it is, if you took away the Inflation Reduction Act, it would be the largest investment in clean energy in American history. And that is true. Although I will say the loss and the lack of certainty around the tax credits for wind and solar, and obviously the stupidity of canceling all of these offshore wind projects is ridiculous. But I'm excited that there's still, that the private sector is still very busy, as I was saying earlier, in getting these, getting all of this clean energy on the grid and still manufacturing, that the manufacturing tax credit still exists. It's very exciting that the storage tax credit, which, it used to be solar plus storage, and now it's storage plus solar. It's the storage that's leading all of this investment, but that's great because we need it. So I look forward to restoration of some of this in a new administration.
I love it. Thank you for reminding us about that beautiful map. And we're all sitting here smiling, including our friends off camera who are here joining us for this recording. It was a special moment to be there, and it felt like some of the most important work of my career when I was working there at the Loan Programs Office under your administration at DOE. And we were all very lucky to be there at that moment in time doing that work. And I'm so happy that a lot of that work has prevailed and still is moving forward. Which brings me to, I want to talk about Puerto Rico, because I know that during your time as secretary, that was really important to you. And we all had a part in that work. What are some of the stories from the folks that you met there that have just really stuck with you? And now that DOE has stepped back, and some would say actually kind of abandoned a lot of that work on the island, what do you think is next there?
Yeah, I mean, it is almost criminal that they took away the Puerto Rico Energy Resilience Fund, which was the fund that Congress passed, $1 billion for rooftop solar for vulnerable people in Puerto Rico. And let me just emphasize vulnerable. I mean, when we were tasked, of course, with deploying this $1 billion, and we did 11 town halls across the island. We heard from everybody on the island, and the Puerto Rican people really helped us to design this in a way that really responded to the intent of the legislation, which was that rooftop solar and storage would go to the most vulnerable. And it was amazing the difference that it made for real people on the ground. And for them, it's not about climate. It's not about clean. It is just about being able to turn the lights on. And so for vulnerable people, I mean, I visited one family. It breaks my heart because this family in the middle of the island, which is in the mountains, they're the last ones to get their power back on. We went into this home, extremely poor family. There's a young man who had cerebral palsy in the bed. He was on a ventilator. Without power, he would die, period, right? So they had all these backup diesel, they had a backup diesel generator. They got accepted into the program, which is great. And he has since passed away. The program was rescinded. They didn't get the benefit of being able to put the solar and storage on the home. We heard stories about people they brought the equipment and they were about to put them on the roof and the grant got yanked. And I mean, there are thousands of people who felt like they could sleep at night because they knew their power wasn't going to go off, and that their children would not be unsafe, especially if they had medical, they needed medical equipment to operate. The senior citizens who are so utterly poor, and they would have, this is what they would be charged. They'd be charged $11 a month for having security. And that just is a game changer if you're poor and you don't otherwise have another opportunity for a lifeline. when 5,000 people were killed in Hurricane Maria and they didn't have this, the community, the island said, we are going to adopt and insist upon a future that allows people the freedom to have rooftop solar and storage. And these solar panels are designed to withstand hurricanes. These are serious effort. I know that there is a movement to sue over the pullback of these grants for the poorest people. The solar industry on Puerto Rico has, they've put now solar panels on the roofs of like 250,000 homes. So it's huge success. They've actually got a virtual power plant in Puerto Rico, thanks to some of our friends, Arushi and others who are helping to design that. But the fact that they have lost the opportunity to serve the most vulnerable is just heartbreaking. And that is exactly the intent of the legislation that was passed by Congress. So it is unlawful to undo that at the whim of an administration who just doesn't like solar. So I'm hopeful that this too will be taken to court and there will be a successful outcome.
Do you still have hope for energy resiliency for Puerto Rico, even
do.
despite all that?
Oh, yeah, totally. I believe so strongly that between the Puerto Rican diaspora in Congress, who are very vocal and very powerful, and Bad Bunny, we will get resilience back to Puerto Rico.
So I want to talk a little bit about DOE as it stands today and the culture. And as I mentioned, I served 10 years across 3 presidential administrations at DOE. So I have seen so many different kind of DOE cultures. And, despite all of it, like across all of it, there's a lot of intense pressure inside of federal agencies around, like we were talking about some of the formality and like rule following, and there's a lot of etiquette, and there's a lot of like, this is how it's done and this is how it's always done. Jigar and I, by the way, bang our heads against that a lot, and I've definitely been accused of being a bulldog and like just running through walls over there, and Jigar has certainly gotten plenty of trouble doing that too.
She was
Not for
secretly
me,
supporting me
Jigar.
the whole
Not for
time.
me.
She was like, keep doing it. Keep doing it. I got your back.
God bless Charisma Troiano, because I knowingly broke the rules so many times. Love you, Charisma. Love you so much. But I definitely knowingly broke the rules to try and get things done, all for the greater good. But, I look at this DOE and how they just flipped the tables. And in one regard, I'm a little jealous of that because I think that they're intent on like flooding the zone and like questioning the way that things are done. They've been extremely ruthless about execution. Maybe DOE, not DOE necessarily, but I would say the Trump administration in general, ruthless about execution. Sometimes it's like, fuck the rules, move fast, use every lever of executive power. Don't let the process slow down the agenda. So to me, I'm like, wow, we really need to reconsider if and when we get to come back in a couple of years, how we're approaching that and like building a new Department of Energy, which I hope I get to go in and like do another tour later in my career. But when you see that, how do you think about that? Like what they're doing, and what do you think we should potentially like borrow from their playbook when we are lining up at the doors of the Forrestal building, ready to march back in?
Jamie, I'm going to hire you first thing. I'm going to, or I would say if to the next secretary, hire her first thing, because you're totally right. You explained it so eloquently. Yes, we are good little rule followers. And, there's decades of rules that were built up around process. Oh, you can't do this. You can't do this. And some of us were new, like me. I'm like, okay, do we have to do it that way? Does it have to take that long? What the heck? So I think we have to completely borrow from that impatient playbook, that we have got to flip the tables on the previous slowness, that we've got to break eggs, not break laws, but break eggs to be able to get things done. I would say this as well through the interagency process, which took forever. If you recall the Treasury rules for any of the deployment strategies, for whether it was hydrogen, you name it, it just took forever. So I would completely bust through all of that. And assume that we can do it unless we're sued. But of course, you don't want to court that, but nonetheless, I just feel like in service to the agenda and knowing that you have 4 years. I mean, if there's any lesson from ours, it took 2 years to get the Inflation Reduction Act passed. And then it took another 2 years to finish writing the rules for the Inflation Reduction Act. That 950 number could have been well over that if we had been able to get it done, to get the Inflation Reduction Act passed a year sooner and get it deployed 2 years sooner. We just got to realize all this has to happen in year one. We have to just plow through it aggressively in year one and borrow from that playbook. I will say one thing we don't want to borrow from is firing all of the capable staff, or at least getting them early buyouts so that no one is there to answer the phone. If you really want to move quickly, you have to have people who are answering the phone to get their questions answered. And if people can't even get a decision about whether their conditional loan is going to go forward or not, 18 months later, that is not conducive to speed. I'll just say that.
Just building on that, I'm curious what you think would be the best thing to do in the first 100 days of a new administration. Like, when you're breaking eggs, when you're doing all these things, right? Because I feel like when you think about the Straits of Hormuz and data center load growth and all these things, we are in this magical time where the amount of pressure on electric utilities actually does allow you to change their business model,
Yes.
right? Like, you actually do have this ability for data centers to pay for batteries and solar for people who live around them, right? You are in this situation where we have the technology today in a way that I don't think was actually there in 2021 to actually help solve all the problems in Puerto Rico.
Right.
I mean, the costs of batteries have come down by another 75% since 2021, right? And so I'm curious, in that first 100 days, like, which eggs do you break first?
Well, I would first, assuming that you have control of the Congress, right?
Yeah.
So you get a president and a Congress on the same page. I would say, one, you push through Congress very quickly a clean energy and affordability bill, or affordability is not a word people like to use either.
Prosperity
power
bill.
Well, no, I'm talking about cheap power, cheap and clean power bill. How's that? Through Congress, where you reinstate these tax credits for solar and wind, et cetera, where you include an ITC on infrastructure, because we do need we need transmission, and that transmission, especially in the places where we know we've got to move power, we don't want to force, again, everyday citizens to be paying for that. So who pays for it? You have to have an ITC to buy down the cost of that. You would launch an effort, maybe you launch a framework for VPPs across the country, or maybe you say, in 100 days, we are going to go to the states, we're going to incentivize, in the first 100 days, 100 gigawatts of power through grid utilization. And you say by 2032, we're going to have 100 gigawatts of grid utilization, of strategies for demand response, et cetera, for grid enhancing technologies, that you get 100 gigawatts from that by 2032. And you incentivize the states. You put a competition out there or whatever. You incentivize the states to do that. You undo all the bad stuff that they did, not just the tax credits, but their refusal to permit on public lands. In fact, you accelerate the permitting on public land. You grant speed permits. You get a shot clock for 6-month permitting for clean energy on public lands right away. You use the Defense Production Act in a way that helps to shore up, transmission, grid equipment, advanced conductors, et cetera. You have a whole strategy around what is it that's going to get us cheap, clean power that's reliable in this country. You do have a battery strategy. I mean, this is why we have to have our own Project 2029. And I know that there are.
I'm there. I mean,
all right. Well,
I just think that, and the one thing I think that the IRA missed, which I think we have to do better the next time around, is putting
tell me.
is putting stuff in people's houses. Like, I think a lot of
Yes.
it was like 950 like manufacturing facilities, et cetera. But I don't think that the weatherization program was large enough. I don't think that like the putting stuff in people's houses program wasn't large enough.
That is so true. And that's a whole nother example of, to Jamie's point about slowness, is that to get this, we had this whole homes program,
Yeah.
which was doing weatherizing homes, but, not all the states were quick to take up on it. We have got to fix that and not just do weatherization, but to your point, add heat pumps and, incentivize the hyperscalers are already incentivized to put them in there, but to figure out as many ways as possible to put stuff in people's homes that ends
Absolutely.
up compensating them.
And I would say, in contrast to what the Trump administration has done in pulling back grants from blue areas, I would say, let's deploy our technology in red areas. Let's go into rural areas and like change people's hearts and minds by like deploying our technology amongst people who maybe have been more hesitant because they don't know what to believe. And like,
Where you and I grew up.
yep, absolutely. I'm proudly from the Eastern Shore of Maryland. I just returned from there and was just talking to some of my neighbors about actually, I was telling them that I was recording this podcast with you, so because I was so excited. But I'm never sure what to say when I'm out there about, like, it can be tough. Like these technologies have been politicized and they shouldn't be. So I think going to some more doubtful groups
Well,
and
I
really
think
spreading them.
you're totally right about this, but remember that all of these factories, we had a huge amount in red country. In fact, like 70% of the announcements. But the kicker, going back to your original point, is we did not communicate it well enough. So
Yep.
if stuff is going into people's homes, they better know where it came from
They better-
and what it's going to
they better
do for
have
them.
The name
know?
right on the piece of equipment.
Yeah,
Brought to
something.
you by the Biden administration. I mean, right there.
Because they had no idea. We had all these great announcements. In fact, I joked that because of the slowness of the rollout, we had a lot of groundbreakings, but not a lot of ribbon cuttings. And the ribbon
Absolutely.
cuttings are what people will know because people are starting to get hired. So, but yes, you're so right about that.
So, Secretary, looking back on your time leading DOE, what are you most proud of?
Oh, I'm so proud of our team and the stuff we accomplished. I mean, we used to say all the time that, sometimes when you're in the middle of history, it's hard to know because you're in the middle of it. And we were in the middle of this historic period of time. But to Jigar's point, it's still an historic period of time. I'm so proud of the amount of manufacturing of clean energy equipment that came to the United States. I'm so proud of how much clean we were able to add to the grid and that is continuing, but there's a lot more work to continue to do. The deploy strategy was amazing. We had a second to none team. I mean, I'm still in awe of the people we hired to be able to do this deployment. I'm in awe of the work being done at the labs. The people at the labs, the scientists, the technology, they're just amazing. And so I'm super proud of what we did. I will forever be proud of what we did, and I know we can build on it. So look forward to helping whoever is elected from the outside, at least, encouraging folks to continue on that trajectory.
I mean, the one thing I would say to you on that is just, I can't underestimate how important it is to give people, hope and confidence from the position that you held, right? I just think that for a long time, and you gave this story all the time, it was the right decision to pull up roots and go to Mexico, right? And it wasn't the right decision to do that because of your leadership. That, like, we went to people and made the case to them and said, no, pick South Carolina, pick Georgia, pick Tennessee, pick Texas, find a state and go there. And then we actually went to the economic development boards of those states and said, do you know what's in this bill? We are matching your money 10-1. You should be more aggressive in attracting these people. And I'm going to this reindustrialist conference in Detroit tomorrow and the next day. And that's happening. And it's all center-right people. And it's happening because you gave people the confidence to believe that we could do big things in this country.
Well, thank you, Jigger. But it wasn't just me. Obviously, we had this incredible tool, which was the Inflation Reduction Act. And when you get a 30% tax credit, and that's a transferable tax credit, you know you have a partner in the federal government. And to break the mindset of it is only the private sector that must do this, that you can't have government partnership, you can't have industrial strategy when every other country is engaged in industrial strategy is insane. So having the leadership of the country saying, yes, we are going to partner to make you successful in the United States. You get a 30% tax credit for your project. You get an additional 10% if you locate in a challenged community. You get an additional 10% if you use a domestic product. That's a 50% partnership. And you get, it's not like we're taking ownership. We're giving you tax credit to be able to do it. Although I will say, some kind of, I'm interested in some of what the Trump administration has done on ownership positions in like the critical mineral space, because it shows you that right and left, people want to see the United States be leading in these things. And for the United States to lead, that means we have to manufacture it in the United States. We have a lot of work to do on supply chains. If we want to get those supply chains here, we have got to co-invest with the private sector to make that happen. And that's what the Biden administration did in the Inflation Reduction Act. And that's why we've got to build on that going forward.
Well, you haven't lost a single step. Thank you so much for being on here.
I've lost an eye, but not a single step. I didn't lose my eye, just for those who just have a patch.
You're about to go viral with rumors about. Secretary, it has truly been a huge honor for me to get this time with you. Thank you so much for joining us. It was an honor to serve under you, and Jigar and I just have such tremendous respect for you. And I'm so excited to see what you do next. And I'm so glad that we still have all your brilliance contributing to the future of this country and to our clean energy economy. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Right back at you. Really appreciate you guys. Great to see you. So miss you all. And I'm so glad of the work that you are doing on the outside. Jigar, slow down a little, will you?
Energy Empire is supported by S2G Investments. If you haven't checked out their podcast, I highly recommend it. They have a great recent episode on the long-term effects of the Iran war and the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. In the episode, Sanjeev Krishnan, Frank O'Sullivan, and Bala Nagarajan make a compelling case that this disruption could be the most powerful accelerant for renewable energy in a generation. And in future episodes, they'll be exploring how those forces are reshaping our food systems and ocean intelligence. Sound interesting? Go find the S2G podcast and start with The Global Energy Order Has Changed. Now what? My goodness, did we catch the secretary on a fiery day?
Yes. Oh, I was very excited by how hyped she was. Very high energy. She cursed. That was very exciting for me. Wasn't expecting that, but she really, she had hot takes for days today. And so it's just great to see her kind of like unleashed and like really coming through. And honestly, I think she was like speaking truth to power like multiple times during our interview with her.
We also talked a lot about communications.
We did.
We did. You and I used to bitch so much about the fact that we were only using mainstream media while she was in office. And you and I got to do all the podcasts and all the other stuff. And for her to say one of her big regrets was that she only did mainstream media and that only reached 3 million people. And all these other people were getting their news on podcasts or TikTok or other things. And that she wished she did more of that. I thought that was very revealing and, something that I think that all of us should talk more about, right? Is how do we better communicate these really important ideas to the American people?
Absolutely. I mean, I think when we were there at DOE, we found this little niche where we could slip these podcasts under the radar and get permission for you to do a lot of them, even though they weren't mainstream, because frankly, people just underestimated how important they were. I mean, that was only 5 years ago, but I think very clearly things have changed. I mean, we know that podcasts specifically were such an important venue for conversation for the 2024 presidential election. So I think that she sees it now, and I'm really grateful that we worked so hard to have such an impact, and now here we are with our own show. But yeah, I will say that I'm not gonna lie, that was a little gratifying for me to hear that, because we really were trying to push the envelope and we were told no a lot.
Well, the other thing that I thought was amazing was she not only answered our questions on the 36 governors and the, Beyonce work, but she actually provided a very detailed script of exactly what every governor should say and how they should say it. And some of it was a bit performative, right? Some of it was saying, look, even if you think you're, basically on the same page as the data centers, you need to actually say you're not, right? And be fiery and tell the data centers you're going to basically impose restrictions on them and make sure that they know exactly, how you're going to put them in their place, because that's what the voters want to hear, right? That's the level of intensity that the voters want to hear. The other thing I thought was fascinating was she was like, look, consistent with the Octopus Energy research results from the Center for Net Zero, you got to give people free stuff, right? It's not enough to make them promises. You got to actually give them a battery in their garage or, a solar system on their roof.
Totally. I mean, I feel like we just got an accounting of all the things that keep her up at night. It felt cathartic for her potentially to just rattle all those things off. I mean, you can tell that she's still got the DNA of a governor, and she was just this is what I would do. 1, 2, 3, 4, she had it there. So it was a really powerful playbook. And I mean, she was right every step of the way. I mean, it was great to hear her talking about community benefits plans, because that is something that under the Biden administration's DOE, we really championed. And LPO specifically worked really hard with all of our borrowers to develop very detailed community benefits plans in the communities where all of our projects were located. And absolutely, the hyperscalers need to take a page out of our playbook in terms of that now. And that's, one of the ideas that she's really advocating for very effectively.
I mean, it's so damn sad that she was born in Canada, because she is one of the most talented politicians I have ever been around.
Truly. I mean, I was at one point I got chills because I was so inspired by what she was saying. And then there was also a very sad moment, and she told that very poignant story about the family in Puerto Rico with the son with cerebral palsy who needed access to the power that they were hoping would be provided by the Puerto Rican Resilience Fund that was at DOE. And of course, that project was canceled. But I mean, clearly, the work that she did at DOE was transformative, very powerful. Everything from the stories from on the ground in Puerto Rico to when she pulled out the map. I love that.
Her pulling out the map
Yeah.
was so quintessential Jennifer Granholm. But I mean, oh my goodness. But I mean, on the Puerto Rico piece, I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but I was really constrained, right? People really hated when I called the secretary, because she wanted to hear from political appointees and she wanted to hear good ideas. And then it creates a lot of work for everybody else. And so they're like, don't call her. Right?
Also, there are rules. You can't just call the secretary. That's the thing. We alluded to this, but the etiquette is so real.
I mean, yeah, whatever. I don't care. But
Not that that's ever stopped you.
So, Maria is obviously the big storm where a lot of people died, but then there was another storm that hit Puerto Rico while we were serving, and they lost power again. And I remember I was on the road somewhere, and I pulled the car over as soon as I found out, and I called the secretary, and I was like, God damn it. I can't believe that no one has done shit to fix the situation in Puerto Rico, because part of the NPR news story I was listening to was that only 4% of all the money allocated under the Trump administration by the Congress had been spent. This was 18 months into our, basically our term, right? And then the president basically nominated her to lead this effort. And she was like, well, you're the person who called me during that period, so you're going to be on this task force too. And it was an honor of a lifetime for me. I traveled to Puerto Rico several times with her. We had a dedicated team of people at LPO who worked on Puerto Rico. We got all those loans out the door for Puerto Rico. I mean, it was just an honor of a lifetime to be able to be part of the solution in Puerto Rico, and just like such a shame that the current administration just cares so little about the people of Puerto Rico that they didn't want to continue to do that good work to make their lives better.
It is very sad, but that being said, the systems that were deployed and the work that got done, it stands, right? I mean, that's what we were just saying about the 950 factories, several hundred of which did go forward because of the work that we all did together. And so I walked away from the conversation with her still like feeling encouraged and feeling heartened. And, she mentioned when you're making history, like you don't realize it at the time. And I still think that our term was historic and what we achieved was very important. And she's got me pumped up about what comes next. And, I've said a couple of times that I'd be like ready to like line up outside of the Forrestal building on day one. And,
she held you to it. She said she's going to tell the next secretary to call you. So I think you have already, offered yourself up. And so you can't take it back now.
I mean, I love DOE. I know, working in government is not for everyone, but I will say the most passionate, the smartest, most devoted, caring, talented people I have ever worked with, I met working in government. And I can't say enough good things about it. So I have to say, if you're interested, like, consider that as a future career. I mean, you can get really big things done. And even now looking back, it still just feels very fulfilling to me. And I'm so grateful that I had this time with Secretary Jennifer Granholm. It was everything that I wanted it to be.
Well, I'm glad that we could make it happen for you.
Welcome to Ask Jigar, our weekly segment where Jigar answers your questions about energy and honestly anything you're wondering about. Huge thanks to our sponsor, Octopus Energy, for making this segment possible. Before we get into this week's questions, a bit of news. We have a brand new merch shop. I am so excited about this. And right now it's mostly Energy Empire merch, but we have plans to add the energy merch of your dreams. So if you have ideas, like drop me a note. I'm taking suggestions. And to celebrate, anyone who sends in a question that Jigar answers on the show will get an Energy Empire hat. So send them all in. Okay, let's get started. All right, Jigar, your first question is from Peter Sinclair. And he says, Jigar, you've said some would-be hyperscalers haven't done their due diligence on whether gas supply is actually reliable across all 8,760 hours of the year. And you've pointed to pipeline capacity as a constraint. I'd add a wrinkle. In a lot of systems, home heating gets prioritized during peak events like a polar vortex. So that gas wouldn't even be available to keep a data center running at the 99.999% reliability that these facilities demand. Can you get specific? Are there projects out there with unrealistic expectations of their gas supply? And what are the more reliable pathways you'd actually steer them toward?
This is a great question, and one that I continue to struggle with because, for those of us who remember, when we came into office at the Loan Programs Office, we had this horrific storm called Winter Storm Uri that affected Texas, and people died during that storm because it got so cold and folks lost power. And during that period of time, there was all this reporting that came out. And one of the things that you saw was that residential customers actually got priority on natural gas supply, and that power plants had to shut down because of the way in which that order occurred. And so, like, a lot of us got educated about these issues, not just me. And so we're in a situation where people are building unprecedented amounts of natural gas generators. They want to run them 24/7 as a bridge to the grid getting turned on. And there's no firm supply available. Like, the way firm supply works is you actually pay the pipeline company for a percentage of their pipeline capacity. And if anything happens such that, like, there's too many people who want that pipeline capacity, you get your pipeline capacity. You can't even buy that firm capacity, even if you wanted to, in some of these markets. Some of the markets that I would recommend people look at is Ohio, right? That's one of the places where Meta put that data center in that has 31 different types of generators in one place, right? That the Williams company, which is amazing, like, did all the engineering on, et cetera. And it's really hard to get secured, firm capacity. And if you do want firm capacity, they have to build new pipelines or upgrade the current pipelines. And that easily takes 5 to 7 years as well, even with the streamlining that this administration is doing. And so part of my challenge in this current situation is people are saying, the grid is unreliable, it's taking too long, I'm going to, skip to the front of the line and figure out a way to go off grid. Well, that's no picnic. And it's actually faster to just work within the grid that we have than try to skip the line and, do something more unreliable.
Yeah, building a pipeline. Ooh, hadn't thought about that in terms of this data center boom, but I wonder when that will come into play. Have you seen any pipelines proposed specifically related to the data center build out?
Oh yeah, every single data center that has a pipeline that's specifically allocated to them, particularly in Ohio, but also in Texas, have requested dedicated pipeline capacity be built for them. And then that has to go through the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. That then has to get approved. There are, steps that have to be gone through to be able to do that. Then you got to find contractors that are available to do that work, which is not easy. Everybody is like working on building a data center right now and getting paid a lot of money to do that. So there's a lot of bottlenecks in the system.
Okay, our next question comes from Rudy Malfabon. And Rudy, if I have mispronounced your last name, I am sorry. Rudy says, Jigar, here's something I don't hear discussed much: campaign finance reform as it applies to utility regulation. Across the country, a lot of utility and public service commissioners have their campaigns largely financed by the very utilities they regulate. To me, that's a major problem. Do you agree it's an issue? And what do you hope gets done about it?
It's a very complicated conversation, and the episode that we just did with Secretary Jennifer Granholm talks about it a little bit, because the utilities are generally the most powerful, biggest donors to governors and state legislators, because many of them view their customer base as just being the regulators, right? Not actually the customers that they serve, but that their board is really just the regulators that they have to get past to get approvals for rate increases. Many states have passed laws that don't allow you anymore to use ratepayer funds to do this stuff. For a while, people were funding this stuff using customer bill money, right? And now you have to, at the very least, use shareholder money, right? So that's the umbrella company above the investor-owned utility. For many PACs, the utilities say, look, if you want to be an executive here, you have to put $7,500 into this PAC. Otherwise, we're going to limit your upward mobility within the utility, right? So that's how they get all this PAC money to basically then, which is a political action committee. Then that's how they then use money to like try to elect the right state chairman for the right committees that regulate them. The whole thing is ridiculous. And you don't see that happening, by the way, with municipal utilities and rural electric co-ops. And part of the reason for that is because they don't get paid as much. And so they don't have all this slush fund money to give around to folks, right? But in the investor-owned utility space, it is a huge problem when people are basically, in some ways, paying to influence the people that regulate them.
Yep, seems like a pretty significant issue to me, but also probably sticky to unwind it, because we know how powerful the electric utility lobby is in all of these states. Clearly, we need so much utility reform. So hopefully now, with rising electric rates and all of this focused interest on this topic, maybe there'll be an opportunity for us to change some things. Okay, our next question comes from Karam Dean, and he says, Jigar, can battery swapping for electric vehicles play a role in grid management? In China, swap stations are running at scale. Each one basically acts as energy storage, and across a network, it becomes distributed storage the grid can lean on. I'd love your take on battery swapping generally, its potential for the grid, and why China has gone all in while the US never really took it seriously.
Well, if you remember, there was a company called Project Better Place, and Project Better Place was built upon battery swapping. It started in Israel, then it went to, I think it was Denmark, and then, to the United States, and then they went to Australia, and then went to too many markets. And probably if they focused on Israel and Denmark, they would have actually been successful. But we also have a company in the United States that is continuing to try to do it. It's hard, right? Because it's custom hardware, right? And it requires you to basically build something that looks like a car wash. The car goes through, it takes off the old battery pack, puts in a fresh one, and then takes the old one, sticks it on the shelf, and then recharges it. Even in China, not all electric vehicles use this battery swapping technology. It's only one or two brands that use it, right? So they basically have two parallel systems, one that has this battery swapping and the other one that doesn't. The reason why people like it is because while the batteries are being recharged in that car wash like situation, you can then do virtual power plant stuff with the batteries. You can like discharge, you can charge, you can do all sorts of other things that make it a grid resource. Now we can do the same thing, right? So when you think about all of the electric vehicle charging stations in the United States, a lot of them now are coming with batteries that are being placed at the electric vehicle charging station because the demand charges are so high when you just put in a electric vehicle charging station that it's better when people aren't using the chargers to be refueling that battery and then use that battery as a buffer to the chargers. It makes everything much better integrated into the grid, but it also allows you to then have that battery that you can provide the same grid forming and grid services. So I think we do something similar. But in general, I'd say that, look, we have an extraordinary grid in the United States. And so, being able to do level 1 chargers, which is just an extension cord into the wall, which takes 30 hours to recharge your battery, or a level 2 charger that, charges more at, 8 to 10 kilowatts of charging, which then can recharge a car in 4 to 8 hours, or going into DC fast chargers works for us. And we have still, even under this administration, 1,000 plugs a week being installed every single week across the country of DC fast charging. And so I think what we're doing works. And at some point, maybe we will do swapping, but it'll probably be for like Ubers and Lyfts, like things that, need really fast charging and every minute matters.
That's a great idea. 1,000 chargers a week, fast chargers a week going in across the country. That's incredible. I think that number would really surprise people. So I'm glad you highlighted that. Okay, our last question is the good stuff. This is my personal favorite of the day, and it comes from Dana Whitfield, and she says, Jigar, burning question. Every time I see you on stage, on a panel, wherever, you're in pristine white sneakers, always spotless somehow. What's the backstory? Why sneakers? And please tell me there's a brand deal in here somewhere.
Let me start by saying there is not a brand deal, but Energy Empire is definitely looking for a brand deal. So if anybody wants to do it, I will wear them and we will feature it in the merch store. So absolutely, we are open for business. I think that when I entered the Biden administration, I had just finished working at Generate Capital. Generate Capital was based in San Francisco. So I was within the culture of never wear a suit, never wear a tie. And then we went into the Biden administration with COVID. And so we weren't going into the office every day. And so I was very comfortable. And then when I finally went into the office, I was asking people for fashion advice, right? Because our friends on Twitter were talking about fashion. I think Jack Andreessen from Breakthrough and others were talking about it. And they were like, hey, Jigar, you should wear sneakers. And I was like, that's great. I would love to wear sneakers. Which one should I wear? And I think they gave me some brand that was like $940 for a pair of sneakers. I was like, that is definitely not happening. First of all, I'm cheap. But second of all, I'm a political appointee. I can't be wearing $960 sneakers. So then I got, Jordans, which were like $150 or something. And so I started wearing those. And then I got like some special, soap and thing to clean sneakers with. And so I try to keep them pristine and white because I was told that scuffed up sneakers are not good. And then
Who told you that?
well, obviously you did, but also, I was at the Latitude Media event and Carolyn Golan was on my ass about how terrible my sneakers looked. And so then I had to go out and buy another pair of sneakers. And so between you and Carolyn, I think I've replaced half of my wardrobe recently.
I love the Stan Smiths. That's what I remember you wearing when we started at
Yes.
BOE. Yes, I have also heard from Caroline about your wardrobe. And yeah, there are lots of opinions. I have weighed in here and there. I have like pulled a lot of punches though in terms of this. You usually do a really nice job. I love the sneakers, and you have empowered me to also sometimes wear sneakers because like my feet hurt, man. You know, it's like wearing sneakers is free and I highly recommend it. It's the
Well,
best.
we had a long conversation about this during Sarah Week. I remember because you have to walk like 2 miles a day during Sarah
It's
Week.
crazy.
And so you were
Like
like, can I wear sneakers? And I was like, hell yeah, you can wear sneakers. What the
I
hell?
will I will absolutely be wearing sneakers with a suit or whatever outfit if you see me at a trade show. Like I am done. The days of me suffering in stilettos are over. So I personally applaud you. And yes, but we are very open to sponsorships from sneaker companies. Please reach out. Thank you very much. And that's all for Ask Jigger this week. Remember, you can send in your own questions. And like I said, if yours gets picked, we will be sending you an Energy Empire hat. The link is in the show notes. Thanks for listening. As always, you can find us at energyempire.fm and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you've got a second, please leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and subscribe on YouTube. It helps new listeners discover the show.
Energy Empire.